Good afternoon and welcome to Do You See What I See? I'm Yolanda Nava. Today's guest is a highly accomplished, internationally renowned, and award-winning writer and director, Jesus Treviño. Jesus Treviño has won more awards internationally and nationally than Carter has little liver pills, if anybody remembers that little statement, and is a brilliant writer and director. He's done Chicago Hope. He's done Resurrection Boulevard. He's done Star Wars editions, and just so many more television and other documentary projects. And he is to be he's been recognized and just been awarded a Pioneer Award from the East Side Arts Initiative, and that is just a highly acclaimed award and one that is treasured, and it's very long overdue. And welcome, Jesus Treviño, and congratulations on your recent award.
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to chat with you. I'm very delighted. Of course, you and I go way back, and it's always a pleasure to be with you, to speak with you, and to like myself. I think you're always up to something. But I think it's what they call the good trouble, right?
It's a good trouble. And when they start calling us pioneers, then we know we've been up to a lot of trouble, and that's hopefully we stay into good trouble until the last day, that we're here.
Right.
Yeah, we have a model. We have Dolores Huerta, that's going to be 95 this year, and she's still going strong.
Yes, indeed. And wish we had more of us that survived that long. I keep seeing friends of mine, very accomplished friends who have come to the end of their days, but their memories live on. And I, of course, am always trying and eager to sustain the memory of all the contributions made by all the wonderful people in our Latino community, our Mexican American community, our Mexican community, our Chicano community. There's just so many people that have done great things, and it's important now and then to just kind of pay them respects. So I'm really, I try to do that with my website, Latinopia. This week we're of course honoring the legacy of the late Fernando Valenzuela.
Okay.
And of course, last week I was looking at remembering my dear friend Gilbert Magu Lujan, one of the great artists of our community, a pioneer himself, who passed a number of years ago, but whose legacy continues. So anyway, I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you're here too. And before we get started, since we're talking about, in memoriam, we also recently lost Assemblyman Richard Alatorre. His service was on memorial services on October 9th at the cathedral in downtown Los Angeles. And let me just ask you, because you've known Richard for a long time, what is your memory of him?
Well, I think the first time that I was really conscious of what his contributions were and how outspoken he was for our community was way back in 1968 when the walkouts had occurred. There was a great deal of controversy surrounding the high school teacher Sal Castro, and it came to the point where we would meet downtown at the offices of the Los Angeles School Board, and we would, of course, regañar. We would protest to the board members about, why are you taking this wonderful teacher who is such a great example for our community out of the classroom, because they had taken him out of the classroom, and they were doing it as a form of punishment. And I remember Richard being one of the people vociferously defending Sal Castro and defending Chicano education. And this was, as I said, early on. He was a young man then. I think we all were young people then. And it's just great to know that people like Richard have continued with a whole lifetime of contributions and of the betterment of our community. And of course, when someone like him passes, you always remember all the great things that they've done and the contributions they've made to our community. And you realize how thankful, how we should be, and how appreciative we must be that our community has so many great leaders, and that when I started way back, I was part of that first generation, that baby boom generation of Mexican American youth that grew up in days of discrimination. And I remember us thinking how, looking back, we had no role models in those days. We didn't realize we were becoming those role models that we would become later on. We were all just infused with a fire in our belly about the changes that had to be brought about in our society, and the improvements that had to happen for our community. Things like getting more people to elected office. I think in those days we had like 3 or 4 elected um, um, people in all of the United States, and now, of course, we have many congressmen and assemblymen and at the state and local level as well as nationally. But in those days, we were just, we were so discriminated against, and we were protesting it. And it was a time of fervor, and I'm glad that we all continued because, like yourself and myself and Richard and many others, we've kept up with and dedicated our whole lives to bringing about social change in a positive way. And some of us have been more successful than others. But it's just great to know that we have a community of like-minded people who carry on the struggle even to this day.
Well, it's important to carry on the struggle, and I remember because I've been rereading my book. It's all in the Frijoles with as an audible book with the Library of Congress for the books for the blind and physically handicapped. And your stories in there are very powerful, and you talk about being discriminated against in school, and yet you went on to become a very, very well-known, highly acclaimed writer and director. How did you make that transition coming from that situation of being considered less than, recommended that you went to a trade school instead of going to college, not getting proper counseling? How did you make that shift yourself to become an activist? What drove you there?
Well, I'll tell you, I can trace it all the way back to a very important meeting for me. The week after the high school walkouts, I was a student at the time, a senior at Occidental College, and there was another senior there named Henry Gutierrez. And he and I, after the walkouts had occurred, we were attending the meetings, the weekly meetings that were going on. And in those days, they had just created an organization of Mexican American students at UCLA and at Cal State LA. And Henry and I decided, well, we got to do one at our alma mater, Occidental College. So we created the first student organization there, Mexican American students. It was hilarious because we didn't know who on our campus was Mexican American. So we looked at the list of all the students on campus, and we found anybody that had a name that even remotely sounded Latino, we invited to our organizational meeting. And of course, we had 3 Italians show up, an Argentine, 2 or 3 Spaniards. But there were a good half dozen of us who were bona fide Mexican Americans who understood that what our struggle about was bettering our community. And so we formed our group, and our first venture was a canned food drive that we took to the United Farm Workers. Mm. And we got everybody on campus organized, and we did a food caravan to Delano. And that's when I met Cesar Chavez for the first time. And I remember at the time I was not very political. I was just, my politics were a couple of weeks old because I had for years felt inferior about being Mexican. And,
Yes.
and I didn't really feel that I had much to say or much to offer. And at one of the first meetings of the Educational Issues Coordinating Committee, I remember young people standing up and speaking eloquently about justice and fair play and the need for redress to all of the discriminations and abuses that our community had undergone. And I thought, oh my God, look at how they're all students like me. And yet they sound so smart, so intelligent, so committed. And then when I met Cesar Chavez, I saw this humble man, quiet spoken, talking about things like the dignity and justice for the farm workers. And I was just bowled over. And I made a commitment right there and then that I would be committing my life to bringing about social change. And so I remember on the drive back to school, it went through my mind, and I kept thinking, I've got to do something. I've been sleeping all this time. I've been in my own, in those days I was a young student and spent a lot of my time listening to rock and roll music, smoking pot, the usual things. And I thought, I'm wasting my time. I need to give my time and devotion to figuring out how I can help contribute to the betterment of my community. And that lit a fire in me, and it's a fire that still hasn't gone out, I'll tell you that.
Well, it hasn't because you've been so prolific, and I must ask you because you've done gazillions of television shows. You've done documentaries. You've written short stories. You've written a book, Eyewitness, a memoir about your journalist experience of seeing things personally and up close as an eyewitness. And that has an impact. I've seen some of those same things as you have, as a broadcast journalist and also as a columnist. And it's what I think triggers, and I wonder if this was your trigger as well as your experiences with Cesar Chavez and those early student experiences. But I remember my mother telling me, if you see something that is wrong, if you see something that is unjust, it is your duty and responsibility to do something about it. And when I talked to a lot of the people, for the book, It's All the Frijoles, I found that many of us got the same message. And that was one of the triggering mechanisms that led us to do something when we saw something that was wrong.
I agree that is one of the very key factors that propelled us. But I think what was equally important um, at the time, the late 60s, was that we finally had critical mass.
Yes.
We were a whole generation, a baby boom generation of young people who were coming of age in the late 60s. And so we had the numbers now to do the protest, to do the movement, if you will, where before there had been fewer, even the GI generation, they didn't have as many people involved. And they did great work with what they had. But now in the late 60s, you had, and I remember being taken by this when I attended the first Denver Youth Conference in March of 1969. There were something like 1,500 young people from
Wow.
all over the United States who came and attended that conference, that week-long conference. I filmed it, and I was just blown away by all these kids from, Mexican American kids from Chicago, from, Florida, from Texas, from New Mexico, from Arizona, from California. I mean, and we were all there coming together to try to define what we would like our movement to be. And from that March 1969 meeting came the whole concept of Aztlan, the concept that we were no longer Mexican-Americans, or Mexican minus Americans.
Right.
We were Chicanos. And we proudly took this term that had been used negatively against us, and we decided to embrace it and say, there's nothing wrong with who we are. There's nothing wrong with the fact that we may have grown up in poverty, but we can be powerful. And we just want to take control of our own destiny now. And it was wonderful to see these 1,500 young people embracing these concepts and articulating the need. And of course, what happened was from that day forth, everyone went home, went back to Chicago, went back to Florida, went back to Texas, to New Mexico, to Arizona, to Colorado, to California. And they took this concept with them. They took the concept of Chicanismo. They took the concept of self-affirmation, of liberation. And when we all got back to our homes, we started doing things like creating the student organizations, MECHA. We started programs at the college level in Chicano studies. We started, many people began to stake out what would be lifelong careers. There were people there that decided, I'm going to be an attorney. I'm going to use my skills, my legal skills, to help our community in immigration and in law enforcement and other areas. And so everyone kind of had the fire within them and got them going on their respective roads. And to this day, as I say, many of us are still, on those roads, still fighting hard for the things we believe in.
It's made for a very exciting life, I must say. And I remember, speaking earlier about Richard de la Torre, the first time that I met him, I was with Gloria Molina, Lilia Seves, who was heading up the Chicana Service Action Center. That was a newly developed project inspired by Francisca Flores. And I saw this, we were speaking about employment needs of Mexican American women in California before the Commission on the Status of Women. And I look at the panel of people, and they were all older, white-haired, white ladies. And so I said to Phil Montes after that, when he was the Western Regional Director of the Commission on Civil Rights, I said, Phil, I said, shouldn't we do something about this? And, he says, well, there's somebody walking right towards us right now who can help. And it was Richard de la Torre. And Gloria and I met with Richard. He said, meet me tomorrow morning. And we went to his office and we told him what we wanted. And he told us our first lesson in political politics. And that was, I know the appointment secretary for Governor Reagan, but Reagan is a Republican. So give me Republican names. So we dug hard. We found one. And we submitted her name. And by God, she was appointed as the first Mexican American woman to be on the Commission for the Status of Women. And she was part of Comisión Femenil. So she was an activist. And it was wonderful. And so we went on from there. And of course, politics goes on and on. But that was that came out of just, shouldn't we do something about this? And then the opening and the opportunity came. And I think that's one thing that we have to inspire our younger generations about. And they're so, locked into just, doing their social media and stuff like that. But to get that passion and that sense of responsibility and duty and the importance of seeking justice in their veins, so that they select careers that are going to be self-empowering and other empowering for everybody.
Yeah, well, I've been working recently with a group of people that are doing just that are reaching out to the younger generation. And I'm thinking there's an organization called the Mexican American Cultural Education Foundation. It was founded by, of all things, a dentist, Jose Luis Ruiz, the dentist. And he has a passion for seeing our presence in motion pictures. And he feels we've been, overlooked. And he decided that he would create this organization to do it. And then he went out and he recruited people like myself, like Moctezuma Esparza, like Bel Hernandez, quite a number of Jerry Velasco, quite a number of veteranos, if you will, people of our generation, who are still active in the media. And he said to them, look, you guys are the pioneers, but you can really be an important step in training and mentoring this younger generation of people. There's no reason why they have to make the same mistakes that we all did.
Mm.
And I agreed totally with that. I said, yeah, we need to let them know that they need to make their own new mistakes. But that we were there to provide guidance and counseling for them. And since then, we've had a yearly competition. The first year we had something like 135 screenplays that were submitted. We narrowed it down to 7 film projects with their filmmakers. And then myself and Moctezuma Esparza and Jose Luis Ruiz went about conducting a series of meetings with people in the industry so that these 7 individuals, the master class we call them, could learn from people already in the field and make those one-on-one important relationship links so that they're not just wondering, well, who do I go to in the industry? Who's out there that might be able to help me? No, we were trying to put them in touch with some of these people, and it was really great because 2 of them finished short dramas. One of them is being considered for the Academy Award Student Awards. She's a 22-year-old Yale student that did a 15-minute film that's very powerful about an immigrant mother and her daughter that get thrown into out on the street. They've been staying with someone, and they get thrown out of their house on Christmas Eve.
Oh no.
And they have to spend Christmas Eve, looking for where they're going to spend that night. And so it becomes a story of Joseph and Mary looking for a place to stay. But it's a metaphor of what's going on in our community. Wonderful story. Anyway, only to say that we've been helpful to these people. And this year, there were 90 submissions, and I read them all. And we're now down to 10 finalists, 10 people that we've agreed have really important stories that need to be told. And once again, myself, Moctezuma Esparza, Bel Hernandez, various other people who are in the industry are going to lend our voice and be supportive of them and help them meet people like last year we invited David Valdez, the producer of all the Clint Eastwood movies, and he met with them. We've met with various other filmmakers, and all of this in an effort to both inspire them, but also concretely give them contacts with people that can make a difference in their future.
Well, this is very important work to do, and I'm very glad you've done it. And it's interesting that your passion that got ignited when you were a young man has driven you to do all these many things. How do you structure your day? You've written books. You've not only done the direction and the writing. You've been involved with the Writers Guild, and you've always been an activist on many different levels. And how do you structure your day? Do you write and do you write every day? Are you like Hemingway, who sat down drunk or sober at 8 o'clock in the morning with his pencils and his tablet, no matter what? How are you so prolific?
The mornings are usually spent first off taking care of my dogs, helping with my wife, just getting the day started. I usually do a 2-mile walk. I used to run, but I've got arthritis now, so I walk for 2 miles every morning. But then I start in on whatever the project is that I happen to do. During the week, 2 to 3 of the days are spent doing Latinopia, my website, and the other days, weekends included, I spend writing and researching. And I have 2 or 3 projects always I'm juggling 2 or 3 projects always at the same time. So I may do a couple of hours on this project and then take a break and do an hour on this other project and etc. so that I keep several things afloat at the same time. I'm fortunate in that my wife is a writer herself, um, and so her time is focused on her work, and so we kind of take most of the day to do our creative work, and then in the evening we cook and make dinner and we spend the evening just catching up on the day's events and watching TV or talking about what our projects are, how our projects are going. But I spend a lot of I'm very careful about my time because I try to schedule it as compact as I can. I hate to 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 have just dead time on my hands. I've always got a project or something that I can be focused on. Currently, I finished my book I have a nonfiction book called The Chicano Documentary.
Mm,
And this morning I got back the proofs for the cover of the book, and it's very nice. And the book is coming out in March of next year, and it's basically profiles of 41 landmark documentary films, either written, produced, and or directed by Latinos
wonderful.
about the Latino experience. And the range is, I begin with Luis Valdez's I Am Joaquin.
Mm.
I include Requiem 29. This is very classic documentary about the Salazar, the riot that took place on August 29th. We have films, I cover films in the farm workers struggle, Si Se Puede, Cesar's Last Fast. I cover films in music. I cover films in politics, art, you name it. There's films about the gay experience, films about really our history. So there's 41 of them, and they're all landmark. They're all really, really important films, and most of them, fortunately, are still available on PBS. And so once the book comes out, people will be able to not only read about the films, but actually go and watch them online.
Well, that's again very important work, and you've had that knack for being the documentarian. Looking back and looking forward into history, so that we're in it. There's been a lot of criticism, I guess, during this election process this season, that Latinos aren't getting enough attention. That the issues that are important to us are not out there across the board. I think it's a mixed bag. I think we're still in a black-white binary, because the East Coast media and drives the thought about what's going on nationally, and it's not appreciated yet that we're almost a $4 trillion market in this country, and that's a lot of beans.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're totally right on that, and that's one of the things that I think inspired Dr. Ruiz on his drive to get us together and to push for more of a Latino presence in motion pictures. Because you're right, we as a population, we're the most numerous minority in the United States.
right,
But from the evening news or the movies, you wouldn't know that.
right.
And so we have to do something to change that. And I think that it's not just going to be my generation, our generation, but it's definitely going to be the younger people coming up that will be making that profound change. And the important thing, I think, too, is to invest them with a historical sense, that where we've been as a community and where we need to go, but also to provide them with the experience that they can make a difference. That a few of us have been able to make a difference. When I started, there was virtually no producers, no directors, no writers who were Spanish surnamed in the industry. And we've really changed that. I mean, obviously, we'd love to see many more, but now, you look at, the people who are involved on evening television dramas. There's there every now and then you'll see a Hispanic, Spanish surname. The same thing with directing, with uh, people involved in it, and of course the actors are finally getting to get some kind of resonance, some kind of a presence as well. Not as many as we would like, but nonetheless, it's we mustn't become discouraged. We must just look at what we have and say we need to do more, and how are we going to do that?
Well, that's the challenge of the day. I think then we can keep uh, talking about the many things that are yet to be done, and accolades to you again for your Pioneer Award again.
Thank
And
you.
I'm glad that you're still with us, and I hope we can continue to do these things on a periodic basis and continue to talk to each other. There's a very important film that we're celebrating, the 70th anniversary of the making of the classic American film Salt of the Earth.
Yes.
And there's going to be an event this this Friday on October the 27th at the Wilgere Theater in the evening to screen that film as a commemorative event, with some of the members of the Revueltas family being present, along with William Jarrett, who was a son of the producer that was blacklisted during the period in the 1954 McCarthy era. So
Right.
we still have these ongoing commemorations, these ongoing projects, and there's just much work to be done. I want to ask everybody, I want to thank you again for joining me today on Do You See What I See? And blessings, and again, congratulations for your Pioneer Award. And to the audience, I just want to remind you, be sure you go out and vote, get your family and friends to vote. This is a very important election, not one to be sat out, and to vote and look at the issues and make the best choice for the best interests of our country and the best interests of everyone who lives in it. I thank you for joining me on Do You See What I See? Be sure to tune in November. Thank you for listening. I'm Yolanda Nava.